Hello, everyone. Tonight we are walking barefoot across a plain of still, warm volcanic ash, the air thick with sulfur and humming with a sound you can't quite name. In the distance, a sharp wind kicks up, peeling away the mist to reveal the lip of a collapsed caldera. Something stirs at the edge, elegant, poised, utterly out of place in a landscape meant for endings. You're here to meet the dinosaur that danced at the edge of volcanoes. You probably won't survive, but you might get a story out of it. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. Drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where my fellow weird history fans are tuning in from. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. The first thing that hits you is the smell. Not the rotten egg stink of sulfur, though that's there too, but something older. It's the smell of ash that has never cooled, of ancient bark charred in a moment of panic, and of time that burned instead of ticked. You shuffle toward those rim boots, crunching on the sharp surface of fused black glass. Steam vents hiss near your feet like the mountain is gossiping under its breath. And just then, as the heat blurs the horizon, you see it, a single figure swaying. Not a hallucination. Not yet. It's not like anything you've seen in textbooks. It's built like a theropod, sure, but leaner, taller. The tail moves with a strange counterweight precision, almost like it's anticipating the movement. And the hips, those shouldn't sway like that. But they do. And they do it with confidence. Here's where it gets weird. This isn't some twitchy flight response. This isn't the janky lurch of a creature trying to escape heat. No, this is coordinated, intentional. A rhythm is hidden in the motion. The sway to the left feels timed. The step forward is soft, deliberate. The turn, a full pivot of clawed toes, is oddly elegant. You don't want to say it, you hesitate. But you're thinking it anyway. It's dancing. And not like those awkward middle school shuffles under gym lights. No, this is performance. Statement. Like it's showing off for something that might be watching. Or maybe just for itself. Ash gusts swirl around its feet, curling upward like smoke at a nightclub. You can hear the thud of distant geothermal pressure popping deep underground like the world's slowest metronome. And it's moving in time to it. A stomp, a breath, a half turn, pause, tail flick. You want to laugh, or maybe cry. You're not sure why yet. Now, quick history snack before you collapse from existential vertigo. This region, let's call it the Red Throat Basin, was once home to multiple active volcanoes during the late Cretaceous period. Think of it as a prehistoric dance floor rimmed with natural pyrotechnics. Geologists believe eruptions here occurred in overlapping pulses for thousands of years. But fossilized trackways preserved in ash layers show that something kept returning, even when the earth cracked open like it was coughing up secrets. That's something. This dancer. You follow the steps closer, squinting at the fine detail carved into the crust of volcanic glass. The footprints are bizarrely uniform. No splay, no slip. They're almost graceful. And they repeat left, right, left, back step, pivot. Left. Again. You're not saying it's choreography, but your Spotify playlist has less consistency. This is where historians lose their minds. Because while most dinosaurs were busy evolving to flee, hide, or fight, this one seems to have evolved to perform. Some argue it was instinct. Maybe a kind of postural display to intimidate. But intimidation doesn't usually involve pirouettes. Others think it might have been mating behavior, think the prehistoric version of a peacock on too much caffeine. But that's just a theory. Historians still debate whether this was ritual reflex or just absurdly bad timing. There's a heat shimmer around your face now, and your skin feels like it's peeling even though you haven't touched anything. You swear the dancer hasn't noticed you even though it passed within 30 feet. It's like you're not here. Or like you're the ghost. By the way, here's your off-topic fact. Octopuses have been observed dancing in coral reefs during certain moon phases, possibly in reaction to tidal changes. So maybe this dino wasn't that weird after all, just a flamboyant overachiever with a flair for danger. Back to the ash. You take a tentative step onto a sloped ridge of obsidian and your foot nearly slides. But then you see it another track, and another, a trail leading outward from the rim. Some old, some new, different sizes. As if this wasn't a one-time show, as if others had done this before. A legacy of lunatics all drawn to the same molten heartbeat. Suddenly, you feel a deep vibration, low guttural. The mountain groans just a little, like it's rolling over in its sleep. The dancer freezes mid-step, then slowly resumes as though the interruption was part of the score, and you realize the mountain has been part of the music all along. One last thing before we move on. Near the edge of the ridge, you spot a fused lump of black glass, shaped like a coiled tail. Not fossil, not bone, just ghost. Burned into memory. And when the dancer turns to vanish into the mist again, you wonder if you'll ever know whether it was real or just a relic of heat and imagination playing tricks on prehistoric brains. But you can still feel the rhythm under your soles. Still hear the beat if you stand very still. Stomp, step, pause, turn. And just like that, the ash swallows your guide. You crouch down beside the trail, your breath catching a little not from awe, but from the sheer heat radiating off the ground, like it's trying to whisper its secrets directly into your skin. The surface isn't just ash anymore. It's a blend of obsidian ribbons and flashes of red glass, as if the earth here once melted into candy and cooled mid-scream. You brush your hand across a footprint expecting nothing. But the edges are so crisp it's like the step happened yesterday. Left, right, pivot, heel dig. Then you see the pattern. It's not just walking. These fossilized prints don't look like something trying to get away. They look like something making a statement. The steps are measured, equal. Sometimes set into a tight spiral, other times stretched out in a sweeping arc like a grand finale flourish. And every once in a while the trail just stops, as if the dancer paused to take a bow. You half expect an orchestra to cue up. Scientists call these things trace fossils. They're the snapshots of moments preserved not in bone, but in behavior. Think of it like the fossilized version of spilled tea, accidental but revealing. And the ones here are unique. You're standing in a corridor of choreography and it's been waiting millions of years for someone with the right shoes to appreciate it. You step more carefully now, following the arc of movement down toward a flatter clearing inside the caldera. The prints cluster here, some overlapping, some spaced so far apart they must have involved actual leaping. There's one print in particular, deep, almost too deep, like the creature had come down hard, maybe even from a jump or mid-spin. The ash around it is splintered in a starburst. You almost clap. It's the most dramatic fossil you've ever seen. The odd thing: there are no predator tracks nearby. No signs of panic or prey pursuit. You're used to ancient footprints telling stories of struggle, chases, escapes, panics. But here, this is something else. No fear, no blood. Just performance, like it didn't care who was watching. Odd historical fact for you in Pompeii: some human footprints preserved in ash show people walking toward the eruption, not away. Historians still debate whether they were rescuing loved ones, retrieving belongings, or just spectacularly bad at directions. But it proves a weird truth: some beings move toward danger, not from it. Just like your dancer. Here's a theory that pops into your mind uninvited. What if this wasn't for show? What if it was a ritual? Not in the religious sense, but as in muscle memory. Something wired deep into the bone, activated only by proximity to raw geological fury. A kind of Pavlovian pavane. Volcano equals dance. Boom equals groove. That would make sense if this trail was isolated. But it's not. As you circle the space, you notice layers older prints beneath newer ones, like a timeline of repetition. Different individuals, yes, but always returning, always dancing. Your radio crackles. You forgot it was on. A distant voice says something about magnetic anomalies. You ignore it. Who cares about polarity shifts when you're staring at what might be history's first flash mob, and then you find it? The final print in one of the oldest trackways doesn't match the others. It's shallow, unfinished, like the foot touched down, then flinched. The earth around it is smooth but scorched. No step after it, no retreat. Just one half-finished motion, a movement interrupted. Maybe the ground gave way, maybe it cracked and swallowed the dancer mid-spin. Or maybe that final pose was enough. The mountain liked it, took it, made it permanent. You feel that eerie little tug in your gut, that signal that something big lived and moved, right here on this very soil, in a way we still don't understand. There's something primitive and beautiful about that, a fossil not of fear or death, but of deliberate flamboyant weirdness. Just a little performance in front of a smoldering audience of lava vents. For your historical fact to drop at parties, some Cretaceous creatures like the Troodon showed signs of complex movement planning based on their unusually large brain-to-body ratio. Our dancer might have had similar neural chops enough to plan, anticipate, and maybe even choreograph. No one can prove it. But then again, no one can explain your Spotify recommendations either. Suddenly there's a tremor, small, just enough to make the glass shards under your boots click like marbles. You look up and the landscape shivers. The mist shifts again, revealing the outline of the crater's rim above, and for just a moment the light hits it right. And you see it. More footprints, a new trail, going upward. And not just going, but climbing. You squint. It's a narrow ridge barely wide enough for a careful step, but the prints are there. A tightrope of toes, heel digs, and balancing countersteps. The dancer didn't just perform at the base, it climbed higher. Why? That question clings to you like ash in your lungs. Why would any creature, dinosaur, bird, mammal, human choose to dance towards something that could kill them? Toward a place where the ground could melt, where the air could cook your lungs, where the sky sometimes rained brimstone instead of water. Maybe it wasn't about showing off, maybe it was about timing. Remember when humans evolved? We did so under constant pressure, climate shifts, droughts, floods, diseases. Maybe, just maybe, some species don't run from pressure. They learn to move with it, to turn it into rhythm. You sit for a moment, legs crossed, watching the trail curve upward into the clouds. No sign of movement. No sound but your own breath and the quiet twitch of volcanic steam. Then behind you, a tiny clink, like a toe tap on obsidian. You spin around, nothing. Or maybe just something fast, or very, very old. You decide not to climb yet. Let the next section wait. The climb is sharper than you expected. Every step upward drags a fresh complaint from your calves, and the air thins just enough to remind you that lungs were never designed for both altitude and residual brimstone. The slope is more stable than it looks, though beneath the soot and crust it's solid lava rock, cooled and cracked into knife-edged slabs. You follow the fossil trail along the ridge's shoulder, each footprint a perfect mold of confidence. Then just ahead, it opens up an eerie little plateau perched on the volcano's edge, like someone carved out a personal stage, and standing at the center of it, caught in mid-pose, is the fossil. You freeze. It's the kind of moment paleontologists dream about and secretly assume they'll never get. A complete skeleton. Upright, balanced on one leg. The toes curled in motion. The arms not puny like T-Rexes, but long, feathered, and splayed wide like curtain flaps in mid-flourish. And the tail, oh, the tail is frozen in a sweeping curve as if it were caught in the middle of a grand pivot. A fossilized dancer. Mid-performance, untouched. You walk toward it slowly, your boots tapping uneven rhythms on the stone. The bones are scorched at the edges, not from time, but from proximity. The ribs are arched in a posture that suggests movement, not collapse. This wasn't a dinosaur that fell here. This was one that posed and then was flash-cooked into eternity by some impatient eruption. If you're looking for a name, the unofficial one scientists toss around is Velox ignidux, the swift fire dancer. Not an official classification yet because no one can agree on whether it's a new genus or a particularly flamboyant strain of raptor. Here's the authoritative historical fact for tonight. Paleontologists discovered in 2019 that certain theropods had hip joints capable of significantly more lateral motion than previously thought. That means they could pivot and sway movements essential for balance and just possibly for dancing. Not proof, but a delicious suggestion. You get closer to the fossil and the detail turns surgical. The wishbone's not broken. The skull isn't crushed. Even the claws are spaced perfectly apart, not curled in death like most raptor fossils. The bones don't scream trauma. They hum intention. Now, here's where it gets even stranger. Someone or something placed obsidian shards in a ring around the fossil, not randomly, precisely. You count them. 8 on one side, 7 on the other. A crescent, a stage light circle, not natural. You kneel down beside the rib cage. There's a hairline crack running through the sternum like the fossilized heart was the last thing to break. You don't touch it. Even sarcasm has limits. You whisper, half joking. What were you doing here? And the mountain answers. Not in words, but with a slow, aching breath that rises from the vents below and makes the air pulse with invisible fingers. You feel it in your ears before you hear it, a low rhythmic rumble. The metronome's back, and the bones seem to lean just slightly in agreement. You sit beside the fossil and sketch a rough outline in the soot with your finger. One leg forward, arms wide, tail countered. It's a pose meant for balance, or for spectacle. So here's the open academic debate. Was this a behavioral adaptation or an evolutionary accident? Some believe this species danced to regulate its body temperature near thermal vents. Others argue the movements were territorial displays exaggerated by heat distortion. A minority even thinks it was pure chance that what looks like choreography was just a series of heat-induced stumbles preserved at the perfect moment. But none of those theories explain the grace, or the fact that you're not alone. You look up from the fossil, and at the edge of the plateau in the steam-shifting gloom, you see another one. Not a fossil, a shape, moving. It doesn't step so much as drift forward. Toes. Brushing the crust, tail swaying, arms lifted, not aggressively, but like someone walking through an invisible curtain. You hold your breath, unwilling to blink. It's tall, slender, covered in dark feathers that ripple with each movement like it's wearing a jacket made of whispers. Its eyes are sunken beneath a feathery crest, and its legs move with that same impossible confidence heel-toe twist. Pause. And then it nods. Not to you, to the fossil, and then begins to circle it. Slowly, reverently, like it's watching a masterclass or paying tribute. You don't move, you barely breathe, because suddenly you're the one who doesn't belong here. This isn't a stage, it's a grave, and a classroom, and maybe even a shrine. Here's your odd off-topic fact while your brain reboots. Flamingos sometimes perform elaborate synchronized marching dances as group displays even when no mating is happening. Scientists still don't know why. Sometimes movement is just the message. Maybe that's true here too. The living dancer, if it is alive, doesn't look at you again. It completes one slow rotation around the fossil, then stops at the same print you noticed earlier, the deep starburst-shaped one. It taps its claw lightly against the stone. Once, twice, 3 times. You swear the air cools just a little, then it walks away. Not fast, not fearful, just finished. You wait until the steam swallows it whole, and then the mountain groans again, this time louder. A warning, a reminder. The performance is over. You rise, legs tingling, and take one last look at the fossil. You don't take a sample. You don't take a photo. Some moments belong to the ash. You're back on the slow part, ticking out a rhythm that feels suspiciously like anxiety, but could just be altitude. Behind you, the fossil still stands in mid-performance. Ahead of you, the path curves inward around the crater like a giant phonograph groove spiraling deeper into the volcano's memory. And underneath it all, there's the rhythm. Not in your head this time. You feel it through the soles of your boots, like something breathing under the crust, like the world itself is holding a beat you were never meant to hear. Stomp, wait, roll, pause. You move with it now, not consciously, more like your steps have started to agree with the tremors. The slope rises and falls in a gentle pattern, and you find yourself adjusting pace, matching its tempo, syncing up like a backup dancer, too shy to admit they learned the whole routine. You crest a shallow ridge, and that's when you see the chamber. A sunken bowl just off the main path like a natural amphitheater. The glassy walls have been melted and reshaped over time by lava, by steam, by pressure. It's part cave, part caldera, part accidental concert venue. The air here is thick with heat, but weirdly silent. The vibrations aren't as strong, more focused. You step inside. The ground dips slightly and flattens out. The moment you do, the vibration kicks up in a steady, pulsing beat, like someone's using the earth itself as a subwoofer. You instinctively slow your step again. 1, 2, 3, pause. You're dancing without trying, and then you notice them. Tracks. Dozens of them. Overlapping. Different sizes, different depths. Some shallow and wide like a juvenile tried a clumsy leap. Others deep and confident, probably adult. All arranged in spirals, figure eights, and in one case what looks suspiciously like a conga line gone wrong. The whole floor is fossilized motion, and every motion matches a beat. This wasn't random. Here's your historical fact during seismic activity. Rhythmic tremors are often used by animals for behavioral cues. Elephants, for example, communicate through low-frequency rumbles that travel through the ground. Some researchers even believe dinosaurs could detect similar frequencies with specialized inner ear bones. So maybe what you're witnessing isn't madness, it's instinct. Primitive choreography performed in response to tectonic rhythm. A dance born not from will, but from earthquake. The heat in this place isn't blistering like before. It's heavy, though, like a hot bath drawn too long ago, still thick with steam and too dense to breathe easily. You sweat through your shirt in 5 minutes. Your canteen tastes like melted iron, and yet your body won't stay still. Every time the tremor hits, your weight shifts just a little. Your foot lifts, your knee flexes. You don't mean to, but it's like your joints remember something your brain doesn't. Suddenly your radio sputters again, only this time the static comes in rhythm. A low fuzz hiss fuzz, then silence, then fuzz again, same tempo as the floor. You blink at it. It's a metronome. You've tuned into the mountain's music. Historians still debate whether prehistoric animals interpreted seismic activity as threat or communication. Some evidence suggests migration patterns cluster near fault lines, but no one knows why. Maybe it was warmth. Maybe it was magnetism. Maybe it was the world's slowest party invitation. There's a raised platform at the far end of the bowl, natural but polished from use. You step up onto it and look down. The footprints seem to spiral around this very spot. Not away, not scattered, toward, like something used to stand here. You suddenly imagine a large figure, tall, agile, covered in filamentous feathers, positioned dead center as a ring of others danced around it. Not in fear, not in submission, but in reverence or rehearsal. Maybe this was practice, or maybe this was performance. You look around at the melted glass walls, and a wild thought hits you. Sound would have bounced off these surfaces, echoed, amplified. This whole space was an accidental amplifier, a prehistoric sound system. They weren't just dancing to the earth, they were listening. Now for your off-topic brain snack. In some species of frogs, males gather in resonant caves to perform louder calls, knowing the cave enhances their croaking. Yes, we're talking about prehistoric dubstep frogs. Nature loves an echo chamber, so maybe these dinosaurs weren't just dancers. Maybe they were also musicians, or at least extremely sensitive to reverb. You sit on the edge of the platform and run your fingers through the fine black powder near your feet. Underneath is a layer of fused clay with more prints these older cruder. Slipping, twisting, like a clumsy attempt. Failed moves, early drafts. Maybe this place wasn't about beauty. Maybe it was about learning. Movement not as art but as language. You imagine a young one here trying its first steps. A sway too far, a misjudged leap. A burst of laughter if dinosaurs laughed. A correction. A teacher watching from the shadows. That's when it hits you. These weren't just dances. These were rituals of identity. We assume intelligence is all about tools and fire and language. But maybe intelligence can also look like motion honed through pressure. A species that choreographed its survival around seismic patterns instead of writing them down. That danced its map of the world rather than drawing it. And maybe they were the smart ones, because at the very least, they knew how to listen. You get up slowly. 1, 2, 3, pause. The floor vibrates again, just a ripple this time, like a whisper of applause. You nod and step back into the narrow path, the rhythm now tucked into your limbs like a secret handshake with the past. The plateau vanishes behind you into steam, but the beat stays. You descend into the southern crease of the caldera, drawn by the glow not of lava, but of warmth caught in the rock itself. The sky above is dull gray now, like a ceiling that forgot it's supposed to be open. The volcano rumbles softly, a low exhale every few minutes, like it's thinking about something it heard long ago and still hasn't decided whether to laugh or erupt. The ground here is smoother dusted in a reddish ash that looks like powdered rust. And scattered across this soft expanse are clusters of tracks, some tight and intimate. Others like someone had taken off running mid-thought. You notice pairs forming figure-8 patterns, then breaking off in mirrored symmetry. It looks like courtship or combat, but with fewer casualties and more flair. You move among the prints like someone tiptoeing through ancient gossip. Here, a sharp heel mark. There, a triple-toed stamp facing directly opposite. The two tracks circle each other close enough to whisper. No drag marks. No tail sweeps. Just crisp, clean choreography. And now the theory floats up from memory, the crater courtship hypothesis. Yes, that's what paleontologists call it because academic papers still need clickbait. The idea goes something like this: the Firestepper or Velox ignidux, if you're feeling fancy, performed its most elaborate mating dances, not in the safety of the forest, but here on the volcanic rim. Why? Well, that's where things get spicy. Some say the glow of magma made the dancers look more vivid, like biological fireworks. Others argue the seismic tremors added a built-in rhythm section. And a few genuinely think the danger made the performance hotter, literally and figuratively. Historians still debate whether this was adaptive brilliance or evolutionary nonsense. But you crouch by one spiral-shaped trackway and feel it in your bones. Whatever happened here wasn't survival panic. It was ritual, precision, peacocking with panache. You think about modern animals. Birds of paradise, for instance, do absurd coordinated routines involving head flips, wing shuffles, and mid-air twirls, all to impress a partner that may or may not even be watching. These Firesteppers might have invented the whole thing. You move to another pair of trails that end in a tight loop. One print spins twice in place, literal dance turns, while the other lingers just outside the radius, almost hesitant, like a courtship that didn't quite land. A prehistoric "it's not you, it's me." You laugh to yourself, then wipe the sweat from your face with the least scorched part of your sleeve. The heat here is flirtier than before, still dangerous, but with less urgency. Like the volcano's mood has shifted from simmering wrath to sultry lounge act. You climb a small ridge and pause to drink. That's when you see them. A ring of elevated stone formations partially collapsed but unmistakably placed in a semicircle like a natural theater with a view of the track-dense center below. It looks like audience seating. You sit down on the warm rock just for a moment, and you imagine it a quiet dusk 80 million years ago. steam curling up from the edges of the crater. Two firesteppers enter the clearing. They circle, sway, leap. Their tail plumes flicker orange in the magma glow. One gives a low call. The other answers with a sharp stomp. The ground quakes, but they don't stop. The dance continues. This was how they chose each other, or just maybe how they proved they could. Here's a historical fact to chew on. Fossil evidence shows that even some large dinosaurs engaged in display behavior. For example, oviraptorosaurs may have used tail fans in mating rituals. Their skeletons suggest vertebral flexibility that allowed tail undulations, sort of like prehistoric belly dancers with feathers and teeth. So this courtship hypothesis. Not as wild as it sounds, but here's the twist. None of these prints overlap with signs of nesting. No clutch depressions, no eggshell fragments, no signs that the lovers stayed after the performance. Which leads to another idea, that the dance was the whole point. Not the pairing, not the egg-laying, just the spectacle. Show over, everyone goes home alone. Which frankly makes this the most relatable dinosaur in prehistory. Your off-topic fact. Some spiders perform vibrational dance displays by plucking strands of their webs and patterns to impress mates. And sometimes if they mess up the beat, they get eaten. So yeah, no pressure. Back in the crater, you rise and descend again into the central ash bowl where the densest tracks form one last spiral. A double helix of motion, two paths weaving tighter and tighter before they stop abruptly. Not in violence, not in escape, just a full stop, mid-spin. Were they interrupted? Was it a finale? Or did the volcano itself decide it had seen enough and pulled the curtain? You sit beside it watching your shadow curl across the soot like a third dancer arriving late. The silence feels full of waiting. The crater thuds a game. You feel it behind your knees. Low, intentional. The tempo returns. You whisper. They came back to this. The mountain answers with another pulse. You feel silly for a moment like you're talking to rocks. But the thing about real ritual, is that it's not about logic. It's about doing something. So many times it becomes truth. It's about showing up even when there's no one left to see it. And maybe, just maybe, some of these dinosaurs danced not just to be chosen, but to remember who they were. The wind shifts again. Not hard, just a subtle rotation of air like someone upstairs cracked a window. The heat follows it, circling you in lazy spirals. You're sweating under your collar, under your sleeves, under your thoughts. And still, you can't leave. Because now, you found the tracks that don't make sense. Not the bold spiral courtship ones. Not the crisp pivot and leap ones. These are different. Staggered. Uneven. Too shallow in some places, far too deep in others. One track even seems to cross itself mid-stride, an impossible move unless the dancer bent time or had rubber legs, which for the record is not a theory. Yet. But you've seen this kind of trail before, not in fossils, in people. It looks like someone stumbling or hallucinating. Now we arrive at what paleontologists call the heat delirium theory. You crouch beside the erratic footprints. They start confidently, then go crooked. At one point, the creature seems to have spun in place 7 full rotations in a tight circle before collapsing into an awkward sprawl of tail and claw marks. No blood, of course. No actual fossil, just movement burned into the earth. A bad trip immortalized. The theory goes like this: the volcanic gases, carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, maybe even traces of hydrogen, sulfide pooled low in the caldera, displacing breathable air. You breathe them in long enough, and you get lightheaded. Longer, and you start to twitch. Longer still, and you begin to see things. Things like rhythm, movement, the pulse of a mountain mistaken for music. Historians still debate whether the Firesteppers came to the volcano because of these effects, or if they evolved behaviors to cope with them. Some think it was both a feedback loop of hallucination and inherited habit. But either way, you're standing in the middle of a fossilized fever dream. You walk the trail carefully. The prints don't just meander, they morph. Some show widened toe spreads like the creature's balance was failing. Others are deeper with claw drags behind them. There's even a place where the footprints double back on themselves, one following the other, like the animal forgot where it had already stepped. It's disorienting just to look at. You shake your head trying to clear the image and notice your own boots have been tracking a strangely similar path. You stop moving. Take a breath. Focus. Because here's the question, did the Firestepper choose to dance? Or was it trapped in a loop of nerve and motion, its brain hijacked by fumes and memory? Modern animals aren't immune to this kind of thing. Cows, for example, have been known to wander directly into carbon dioxide vents and drop like unplugged marionettes. Birds sometimes crash into lava fields during mating flights, their navigational systems overwhelmed by heat, shimmer, and pressure differences. But what if, stay with me here, the Firesteppers weren't dying when they danced? What if they were dreaming? A trance state, triggered by heat and gas. A biological override that turned their movements into loops. Repetition, ceremony. Not madness, ritual. You notice a dip in the trackway. A slight depression where the tail seems to have dragged longer than before, as if the dancer slowed down. Lay down, maybe. Took a nap inside the hallucination. You sit beside it. The heat presses around your shoulders like a too heavy blanket. It's not hurting you, not yet, but it's touching you, testing. You lean your head back just a second and let your eyes fall closed. And then, a sound, faint, high. Not birdsong, not wind. It's like glass tapping, chiming. You open your eyes. Nothing around you has changed, but the volcano hums louder now, and the rhythm is faster. Your pulse joins it. You stand and start walking. Following the uneven trail, you let your boots trace the steps as best they can. You try to match the missteps, the spins, the strange angles. It's awkward. But you keep going. And slowly, your body gets it. The path wants you to move a certain way. A lean here, a twist there. You find yourself breathing in tempo again, and when your foot hits a certain patch of ash, the mountain breathes out with you. It's unnerving and kind of beautiful. Odd fact for today, there's a fungus in the genus Massospora that infects cicadas and causes them to buzz louder and attempt to mate more frequently just before they die. Essentially, the fungus hijacks the bug's behavior and makes it dance to its doom. Is it possession? Is it programming? Is it a weird evolutionary prank? No one knows. Nature loves a weird encore. You take one last slow spin in the middle of the uneven trail. The tremor beneath your feet matches you like a dance partner you didn't realize you had. And then silence. The rhythm stops. The air cools. The spell breaks. You look behind you, half expecting your own footsteps to have been scorched into the earth. But no. Just boot prints in volcanic dust. Normal. Mundane. The hallucination, if that's what it was, is over. And what's left? A trackway. Confused. Spiraled. Staggered. Proof that not every dance was for show. Some were survival. Some were madness. Some maybe were prayers. You sit again, this time not because you're tired, but because your legs need to forget how the mountain felt under them. This place has held 1,000 kinds of motion. And this one was for the ghosts. You descend into what looks like a burn bowl. The walls around you rise in jagged tiers, black and folded in on themselves, like someone tried to crumple the volcano into a paper flower and gave up halfway through. There's no wind down here. No bird calls, no whisper of grass, just heat. Just the scent of sulfur and something vaguely metallic, like the aftertaste of coins held too long in your mouth. And Ozfa. And then you see them. Bones. At first, just a single curve of rib. Then another. Then a full vertebral column scorched into the base of the basin like an old fire ring. You step closer and realize they're not scattered, not crushed. They're placed, or rather frozen in position, just like the dancer fossil you saw earlier. But this one's not upright. This one's collapsed. Its limbs are curled inward. the tail tucked like a question mark, the head low pressed into one clawed hand. A final pose. Not dramatic, not flamboyant, just quiet. A fall that was almost a bow. It's not the only one. As your eyes adjust, you start to see more. Half a dozen skeletons, maybe more, scattered across the black basin. Some sprawled, others huddled. All caught mid-motion, none with visible trauma, no shattered skulls, no snapped femurs, just stillness, like they all decided simultaneously to lay down and stop. Welcome to what some paleontologists call the dying ground. It's an informal name, you won't find it in published papers, but field teams use it when they come across fossil beds like this, clusters of partial or complete skeletons preserved in unnatural numbers. A sudden mass event, no clear predator, no obvious catastrophe, just a concentration of endings. And this one is especially unsettling, because all the bodies here are dancers. Every one of them shares the anatomical traits you've already learned to recognize: long leg bones, curved claws suited for grip, and flare-tail vertebrae fused just loosely enough for flexibility. And most disturbingly, almost all of them are posed. Not scattered by flood, not jumbled by scavengers, just caught mid-act. You crouch beside one and notice the pelvis is tilted to one side as if in the middle of a sway. The foot bones are aligned as though about to pivot. This was movement turned fossil. A choreography interrupted. So what happened? Some think this was a mass hallucination event. That a change in vent gas composition, maybe higher carbon monoxide levels, sent a whole group of firesteppers into synchronized seizures. Others propose a rogue eruption not strong enough to spew lava, but powerful enough to flash boil the air. Instant fossilization, like nature taking a snapshot at the worst possible moment. Historians still debate whether this was a one-time tragedy or a recurring sacrifice zone. You step carefully between the skeletons, heart slowed now by the weight of what surrounds you. These weren't just bodies, these were performers. Creatures who knew rhythm, who traced patterns into the ground like music turned to bone. You pass one smaller skeleton juvenile, judging by the proportions, and notice something strange. It's nestled against a larger one, ribs tucked against ribs. Protective, intentional. You didn't come here for tenderness, but you found it anyway. Odd fact break. Just to breathe for a second. There's a species of Australian fire beetle, Melanophila acuminata, that uses infrared sensors to find freshly burned forests. It seeks out devastation because it lays its eggs in scorched wood. So yes, some creatures evolved not just to survive fire, but to need it. Back to the basin. You climb a little higher along the edge and look down. The layout of the bones, it's not random. You can see arcs, clusters, even a few aligned diagonals that mirror the courtship patterns you saw earlier. It's like the final moments echoed the movements they once practiced. One big tragic encore. Or maybe they never stopped dancing. Even at the end, there's one fossil that haunts you more than the rest. It's half buried in a slope of obsidian scree, but what sticks out is unmistakable: a clawed forelimb extended. Not curled inward like the others. It reaches toward the rest. Like the dancer was trying to finish the step, connect with someone just out of frame. You imagine that final breath. A haze of gas. A pulse from the earth. A foot lifts, a tail swings, then silence. The volcano keeps the beat. But no one answers. You sit down at the basin's edge. Let your fingers trail the ridged fossil remains of a tailbone. It's brittle. Hollow feeling. You don't touch too hard. It deserves quiet. Your radio clicks on unprompted, then dies. Even static feels disrespectful here, because this isn't a battlefield. It's a stage with the lights turned off mid-performance. You think again of the question that's followed you from the first footprint: were they showing off? Or were they worshipping? And if it was worship, was this the altar? Did the volcano demand tribute? Or did the dancers offer themselves freely, pulled by a rhythm deeper than safety? You don't get answers. Just the long exhale of steam from a nearby vent, like the mountains remembering something too. Something it can't quite forget, and maybe never should. You climb out of the basin like someone sneaking out of a funeral. Quiet, head low, feet deliberate. Behind you lie too many dancers frozen in their final pirouettes, and ahead, something even stranger. The air changes as you move upward, cooler now, but denser too. Like the mountain's been holding something in its lungs and is about to sigh it out. The trail curves around the ridge and opens into a gnarled expanse of what can only be called forest, though not in the way you're used to. These trees are stone. You're standing at the edge of a petrified grove. Tall, twisted trunks rise like giant claws, bark textures turn to ripple-patterned rock. The branches don't move. The leaves, long since vaporized, are now thin shales embedded in the surrounding stone. It's like stepping into a still life painted in gray and rust. You shuffle between them, each step sending brittle flakes skittering across the volcanic floor. The trunks are bent not vertically, not even horizontally, but at odd angles, like they were mid-motion when something told them to freeze. You stop beside one particularly massive tree, its top split into a fan of fossilized branches. The trunk twists left as if recoiling. Nearby, another twists toward it. A third leans back. Together, they form a kind of spiral motion you can't unsee. The forest is dancing too, or reacting. The scientists call this area the Echo Grove, though no echo actually bounces here. Too many surfaces, too much weird geometry. What the name really refers to is the idea that these trees didn't just die standing. They responded to something. Some think it was a shockwave, maybe from a sudden volcanic pulse. Others suggest extreme pressure changes caused the flexible, wet trunks to contort violently in their final moments before being petrified. But the most controversial idea, that they bent in reaction to movement, to sound, to dance. Historians still debate whether this grove was sculpted by force or rhythm. Was it the result of an explosion, or did it shift ever so slightly in response to the ground's pulse? You walk deeper. More trunks curl like dancers leaning into a shared signal. You start to map out their placements. Not random, not evenly spaced, but arranged in clusters, semicircles, spirals. There's even a double curve of trees that seems to mimic a fossil trail you followed earlier. You're surrounded by movement that died mid-movement. It's eerie and beautiful, and more than a little theatrical. Here's your historical anchor. Petrified forests exist all over the world, the result of rapid burial under volcanic ash and mineral-rich water infiltration. Over time, organic material is replaced with silica opal or quartz. But what's unusual here isn't the preservation, it's the pattern. Most petrified groves fall in straight lines from natural growth. This one bent, curved, like it heard something, and decided to join in. You crouch beside a tree with a low curved arch in its midsection. There's a fossilized claw print at its base. A single dancer perhaps pressed up against it mid-spin. You imagine them, creature and tree, leaning into the same beat. Your odd fact for this moment: plants can hear. Kind of. Studies show that certain roots grow towards sources of vibration. Bean plants even adjust growth in response to sound frequencies. Nature's weird like that. You crank the right bass line, and apparently even your ferns might groove. So maybe this grove wasn't just a passive witness. Maybe it participated. You lean against a bent trunk, letting its fossil-smooth surface cool your back. The rhythm has faded again, not gone, just distant, like a party you left but can still hear down the block. You look up, and for a moment you swear the branches above form a canopy spiral. And in the center of the sky, a single beam of light pierces through a break in the clouds, hitting the middle of the grove like a spotlight. And there, nestled in the ash, is another skeleton. This one is curled not in pain or collapse but in rest, head tucked under wing, tail curled around the body, one foot outstretched as if mid-dream. It didn't die mid-dance. It laid down on purpose. You approach slowly, reverently. The bones are intact. The skull has a slight crest, The spine has no visible damage, and the hips, they're still tilted, still swayed. Even asleep, this one kept the rhythm. You sit beside it, glancing up through the fossil branches at that thin shaft of sunlight. It feels like a cathedral if the choir was extinct and the incense smelled like sulfur. You wonder if this was the last one. The final dancer. The one who didn't collapse in frenzy or eruptive panic, but chose stillness. Chose to end the dance. Or maybe to dream it into somewhere else. The volcano grumbles softly, not a threat, more like a yawn. You whisper, "Was this your audience?" You get no answer, just the trees. All of them still frozen mid-turn. Your breath feels steadier now, slower. You're not hallucinating, not quite. But the line between movement and memory has definitely gotten fuzzy. You run a hand along the ground feeling for fresh tracks. There are none. But under the petrified root web beneath layers of ash and time, you can feel something pulsing, like a beat, like something old, still listening. You leave the grove behind, but not really. The shapes of those twisted trunks stay imprinted somewhere behind your eyes. You keep expecting to see motion in your peripheral vision, an arm swinging, a tail flicking, but when you turn, it's always the same. Empty ash, heavy air. You climb back towards the upper ledges, drawn by the next question you can't quite let go. How did they survive this? The heat, the gas, the sheer recklessness of dancing along the rim of planetary indigestion. What kind of creature walks toward lava, spins a few times, and lives to do it again? That's the debate, of course, always has been. Some paleontologists believe firesteppers were adapted, biologically engineered by nature to endure volcanic extremes. Others think they were just lucky thrill seekers with no self-preservation instinct. And then there's the weird third camp. The one you secretly like the most. They were volcano whisperers, intuitively synced to seismic rhythms, able to predict eruptions before they happened and escape between beats. So, you're here walking along a stretch of stone glazed like a broken teacup, searching for proof of any of it. And then, as if the mountain heard your question and raised you a riddle, you find the footprints. At first, it's one trackway, then another, then dozens, all radiating outward from a central mound like spokes on a wheel. They vary in size, depth, direction, but all share one thing: they stop. Not all at once, but gradually. Each set of tracks gets lighter, fainter, then gone. No slide, no tumble, no signs of panic, just absence. It's as if the creatures vanished mid-step. You circle the mound. It's not lava, not bone, just a dome of hardened ash and obsidian with strange ridges running along its top like spinal plates. Not natural, not completely. You kneel, put a hand to the ground. Warm. Not warm like sun-baked stone. Warm like breathing. Okay, deep breath. Let's talk thermoregulation. That's your historical nugget here. Recent studies suggest that some theropods, especially feathered ones, may have had advanced internal heat controls, allowing them to survive in highly volatile environments. Hollow bones, air sacs, and unique respiratory systems let them function in oxygen-poor areas. Which sounds like science fiction until you remember birds still do this today. Ever seen a snow goose sleep in sub-zero wind? So yeah, maybe firesteppers didn't fear volcanoes. Maybe volcanoes felt like home. Still, there's no clear answer to this pattern of fading tracks. Historians still debate whether these vanishings indicate death elevation changes, or something stranger like airborne liftoffs or migration rituals that left the ground entirely. No wings have been found on the fossils, no evidence of flight, but the mystery remains. You move clockwise around the mound and notice something else: pits. Shallow depressions evenly spaced. Not footprints too circular. These look almost like kneeling marks. You blink, then check again. They're symmetrical, in rows, like a line of creatures once sat here, or rested. You count 6, each aligned with a departing trackway. So, 6 dancers, 1 center mound, all tracks leading away but fading like a pencil run dry. And that's when you notice the mineral deposits. Tiny flecks of red and green crystal scatter across the ash near the mound. Not random, clumped around the base like offerings. Some are fused into the glass. Others are still loose like someone meant to pick them up but got distracted by their own extinction. You pocket one, just for a moment. It hums faintly in your palm. Your oddball fact for today: hummingbirds can enter a state called torpor, which slows their heart rate to near-death levels to conserve energy. During this state, they can survive freezing nights in mountain regions. Some scientists speculate it's the closest natural equivalent to suspended animation. You look again at the mound. Is it a nest, a performance stage, a geothermal access vent, or something else entirely? Because here's a thought you didn't expect: what if this was their sanctuary? Not a place of death, not a stage, a safe zone. A hotspot where body chemistry and earth chemistry met in agreement. A living chamber, a pulse point. And those vanishing footprints, they didn't end because the dancers died. They ended because they became something else. Adaptation doesn't always leave a fossil. Sometimes it just walks away. Maybe they followed the beat out of this world and into the next moment of time too graceful for the ash to catch. You rise suddenly uneasy. The mound doesn't feel threatening, but it does feel awake. You step back, slowly, and behind you, so faint you could almost dismiss it, you hear a sound. Soft, whispered, a tap. Then another, like claws on stone. But rhythmic, always rhythmic. You don't turn around, because part of you believes that if you look, the mound will look back. So you walk, one step, then another, careful, respectful, because maybe this wasn't a species flirting with extinction. Maybe this was a species that figured something out, something we never will. You walk faster now, even though the terrain doesn't invite it. Each step clicks across brittle glass and soft ash, every crunch of your boots answered by a brief pause of silence, like the mountains waiting to see if you'll step again. Eventually, you reach the mouth of a narrow cave carved into the caldera wall. It yawns open at an angle, its entrance scorched black and streaked with faded red like a smear of forgotten blood from something that bled magma instead of marrow. You hesitate, and then you go in. The air is cooler at first, but dry, heavy, like a tomb that hasn't had visitors since visitors were invented. Your flashlight beam slices across the stone, illuminating a corridor of soot-stained walls that shimmer faintly in places, not with crystals but with charcoal markings. Cave art, or something trying to be. You inch forward. The first image is crude, 3 spiral lines arranged like whirlpools, each with a smaller mark at the center. A tail. A dancer's spin. No way to know, but the rhythm's unmistakable. Even the drawing dances. Next comes a row of slashes alternating long and short, etched into the stone by something with claws. Morse code for the prehistoric. And then you reach a wide panel and it stops you cold. It's a mural, drawn entirely in ash and soot. The central figure is unmistakable, long-legged, tail-arched, head crested. The Firestepper. It's flanked by smaller versions of itself posed in the staggered positions like frames in a flipbook. The limbs change slightly from figure to figure, arms lifting, tail, curling toes, flexing. A dance sequence. You realize you're looking at choreography, not motion captured by accident in fossil, but intended movement, preserved on purpose. Who made this? Firesteppers didn't have hands like ours. They couldn't paint, but they could scrape, could press, could claw. Historians still debate whether these markings were communication training or instinctual residue. Some say the creatures left them for others of their kind. Others argue it was unintentional muscle memory echoing into stone. A few go so far as to claim it's art. You keep walking. This next chamber is wider, the ceiling opening into a flared dome of blackened basalt. More markings here. Circles, spirals. A pair of twin curves side by side, almost like dancers touching tails mid-spin. And near the back of the chamber, a large cluster of smudges in a messy bloom of soot. At first it looks random, but then you trace the outer edge. A spiral. Again, always the spiral. The universal motion. Birth. Storms, galaxies, dancers. This place wasn't a den, it was a studio, a fossilized rehearsal hall. You sit for a moment on a slab of stone still warm from whatever geothermal heartbeat thrums below. You imagine the dancers inside here, practicing, resting, marking their movements on walls so they wouldn't forget them, so others could follow. A memory not made of bones or brains, but of steps. Here's your historical fact. Some birds, like pigeons and starlings, pass on navigational memory generationally. Young birds who've never migrated before can still find ancestral routes. Scientists don't fully understand how. It's possible firesteppers pass down choreographic memory the same way. Not through teaching, but through encoded muscle instinct. Like the beat was genetic. You lean back against the stone wall. There's a line of soot here, a horizontal wave scratched into the surface. You brush your fingers across it. Your touch lifts black powder soft, delicate. And underneath, more spirals. So many spirals. Your offbeat fact today. In some indigenous Australian cultures, spiral motifs are associated with time, wind, or traveling spirits. They recur in sand drawings, bark art, and cave glyphs across thousands of miles, which is either a coincidence or a truth so big it has to spiral just to fit in our heads. You sit very still. Then you hear it again. Tap, tap, slide. From deeper inside the cave. Not close, but not far. You raise your light, scan the corridor ahead. Nothing. Just soot and silence. You stand up, but you don't move forward. Because now you're wondering, what if you are being watched? Not by predators, not by spirits, but by audiences. What if some part of this cave is a theater, and you right now are on stage? You turn slowly, flashlight, grazing the walls, the floor, the etched spirals. You half expect the soot to rearrange itself, for the mural to shift into motion, for the tracks to start forming under your boots. Instead, silence. So much silence it almost whistles. You take a final glance at the largest spiral. In its center, one faint claw-marked symbol. Not a creature, just a shape, an eye. Or maybe just a mistake in the soot. You're not sure. You leave slowly, not because you're afraid, but because you feel like you just interrupted something very old rehearsing a scene that wasn't quite ready for you. Outside, the sky hasn't changed. Still that gray ceiling, but the light is thinner now. Dusk again. Or maybe it never stopped being dusk. Volcanoes don't do sunrises, just flickers. You walk out of the cave with black dust on your fingers and spirals in your head. Because someone once danced here, and they left the steps behind. The air outside the cave feels different. Not just cooler, cleaner, like it filtered through the soot and came out thoughtful. You brush your palms off on your pants, but the ash doesn't fully leave. It never does. You'll find it later in your socks, your teeth maybe behind your ears. Some places never forget. The slope before you narrows into a finger of land stretching toward the crater rim, and you follow it because what else can you do? It's the only trail left, and the sky above has taken on that weird purple cast that volcanoes give to twilight, like the mountain is blushing for the things it remembers. Then you hear it again. A call. Soft, warbly. Not a voice, but not quite wind either. You freeze. Wait, listen. Then it comes again. A series of coos and clicks like someone beatboxing underwater. You duck behind a slab of blackened rock, squinting through the shimmer of heat. And then you see it. A dancer. Not fossil, not imagined. Real. Alive. You stay crouched. You've learned your lesson by now. Do not interrupt. The creature stands on the far edge of the ledge, silhouetted by the sky. Tall, slender. Feathers along its spine glint faintly. Its tail arches behind like a question waiting to be asked. And it moves. Gracefully. Casually. Like this is the most normal thing in the world. It hops sideways once. Twists its hips. Head dips. Tail flicks. Then the real show begins. It shimmies. No joke. Full body undulation, shoulders to hips to claws. Then a high kick. Then a tail spin that would have made a figure skater weep. You're watching the closest living thing to a prehistoric performance artist. And here's where science starts catching up with the myth. You know birds of paradise, right? Those absolute divas of the avian world with their ridiculous courtship routines and feathers that look like laser beams. Well, geneticists have recently connected certain theropods, yes, including our volcanic dancers, to lineages that would eventually branch into birds like Parotia and Astrapia. Here's your historical fact. The bird of paradise, known as the Laws's Parotia, has a mating dance that includes chest shaking, head tilting, and eye widening while hopping in perfectly measured circles. And yes, they've been known to rehearse it when no mate is present. So maybe, just maybe, performance evolved long before the bird stage. The Firestepper continues its routine, never acknowledging you. But it's not alone. You notice it now, a second one perched slightly higher on a rock outcrop watching. Smaller. Juvenile, maybe. Not dancing, just observing, tilting its head side to side with each movement of the lead performer. Learning. You stay as still as possible, not out of fear, out of respect. This is a lesson in progress, and you get the sense that you're not the intended audience. The adult finishes with a dramatic tail crack and a bow not exaggerated, just a simple dip of the neck. Then it stands still. Waits. The juvenile takes a cautious step forward, then another. Its first hop is clumsy, too high. It almost trips over its own tail. But the adult doesn't correct it, just watches, and slowly the rhythm catches. One step, two, a twitch, a tail sway. You feel like you're watching history restart itself, a new generation picking up the beat. Now, here's your off-topic, but strangely relevant fact. Juvenile Japanese cranes have been seen mimicking the ritual dances of adults even when they're alone. No social cue, just instinct. Something ancient unspooling in their blood. You finally shift your weight and your boot scuffs a rock. The sound is microscopic, but the adult dancer pauses. Its head swivels, one eye black and reflective as volcanic glass locks onto yours. You don't breathe. It stares for a heartbeat, then gracefully tilts its head. Once, twice, like a nod or a cue. Then it leaps, tail extended, feet landing light as a whisper, and is gone into the haze. The juvenile hesitates, looks toward you, then scurries after. No panic, just exit stage left. You sit there, long after they vanish, watching the heat ripple where they once were. You think about birds again, about the ridiculous ones. The ones that risk everything for beauty. Peacocks that can't fly well because their tails are too big. Birds that build useless nests out of garbage because they like the look of it. Birds that spend all day practicing head bobs and wing flips with no guarantee anyone is watching. And you wonder, maybe beauty isn't an accident. Maybe it's a strategy. Maybe when the earth got loud, some creatures didn't run. They danced, because that was how they heard each other above the noise. You rise from behind your rock, your body stiff, but your thoughts weirdly calm. Because something just happened, something real. The beat was passed on, right in front of you. No fossil required. You stay on the ledge longer than planned. Time's funny out here. The volcano doesn't do clock, it does moods. One moment the ash glows amber. The next, it dims, like someone closed a lid on the sun. You finally move when the wind shifts again, blowing smoke sideways and revealing the true size of the crater below. And it's breathing. Not metaphorically, not just poetically, literally. The earth swells and sinks every few minutes, a soft rise-fall motion like a sleeper's chest. You realize that the ground beneath your boots is part of a much larger organism, a system of gas vents and magma chambers still grumbling from ancient meals. Then the mountain speaks. Eruption. But not a Hollywood one. There's no booming explosion, no flaming sky. It starts with a low rumble so deep it tickles your bones. Then comes a vertical column of steam blasted skyward with the sigh of 1,000 buried memories. No lava, just vapor ash, and the sound of pressure arguing with stone. You flinch anyway. Instinct. You duck low behind a chunk of obsidian. The heat that follows is brief but sharp, a backhand from the sky. Dust rains down in fine particles that stick to your skin like powdered histories. You watch as the steam spirals high above tall, silent, majestic in a way that doesn't need witnesses. And then you feel it. The rhythm. Not from the ground this time, but from the air. Pulses, slow, expanding. Like someone turned the sky into a drum and gave it permission to solo. You stand cautiously. The vibrations hit your chest in waves. Not dangerous, not yet, just big. Then you see it. From the opposite side of the crater, a figure appears, just a silhouette at first. Too far to make out details, but the posture is familiar. Tail low, head forward, arms out balanced like a tightrope walker trying not to care. It steps onto a thin tongue of a land that juts over the open mouth of the volcano. And it dances, right there above the chasm, with steam hissing beneath, with sky breaking open above. It turns, sways, lifts, one leg pivots. The whole sequence mirrors the courtship steps you saw earlier, but slower, controlled. Like the mountain is conducting and the dancer is obliging. It's hypnotic. You know it's dangerous, that the heat could crack the ground, that the gases could steal breath. But none of that matters to the dancer. Because this is not panic, not survival. This is ceremony. Historians still debate whether any prehistoric species could anticipate eruptions. Some say changes in air pressure or magnetic fields might have triggered behavioral responses. Others argue animals simply fled when it got hot. But here you're watching a creature step toward the danger, not running, not even hesitating, joining. Your historical fact. Modern birds have been observed modifying behaviors in response to volcanoes. In 2010, during the eruption of Eyjafjallajökull in Iceland, birds adjusted nesting patterns and flight routes in response to airborne ash, demonstrating not only awareness but adaptive rhythm. So maybe firesteppers weren't just survivors. Maybe they were interpreters, translators of tectonics, choreographers of combustion. You shift your stance, careful not to slip, and realize the dancer's steps have taken it closer to the steam vent, so close now that its body blurs with the vapor, but still it moves, even as visibility fades, even as the mountain grumbles louder. And then it stops, not abruptly, not like an animal startled. It ends the dance, clean, deliberate, head lowered, tail extended, final pose, and then it disappears into the white. You wait, longer than you should, but it doesn't come back. Your breath sticks in your throat. You walk to the edge of your own ledge, peer across the crater to where the dancer once stood. No movement, just steam curling like ribbon around the rocks. And in the silence that follows, the mountain laughs. A single deep tremor shakes the earth, quick, sharp, like applause delivered by a fault line. You sit down, because you finally accepted something. These weren't just creatures that live near volcanoes. They used them. The eruptions weren't disruptions, they were opportunities to perform, to signal, maybe even to end. You think about performers today who time their final notes with fireworks, about firewalkers, about stunt pilots, and you think maybe that instinct to go out while the world burns behind you has roots older than any stage. Your offbeat fact before we close: the Tungurahua volcano in Ecuador has an entire species of butterfly that lays its eggs on lava-warmed soil. The heat speeds development. Some caterpillars even die if relocated to safer, cooler ground. Some things don't survive without heat. You rise, feeling the mountains settle again. Steam fades, dust thins. The beat for now is quiet, but it's never gone. You start walking, not hurried, just in rhythm, because the dance isn't over. Not yet. You don't remember when the sky went black? Not night black, not star-strewn, just thick, tarry dark like the inside of a burned-out candle. The kind of darkness that doesn't just block out the sun, it forgets the sun ever existed. You're halfway down a narrow path etched into the caldera's side when you notice the steam vents have stopped hissing, and the silence, too quiet to be quiet. It's a hush with weight. Then you see something caught in the path ahead. You move closer slowly. It's not moving, not steam, not shadow. It's a skeleton. But not like the others. This one isn't laid down collapsed or curled in fossilized sleep. It's caught mid-stride, one leg outstretched, tail arched high behind it, head tilted toward the left. The jaw is open, but not in agony, in expression. And the feet. One is flat on the ground, the other mid-lift, mid-turn. This thing didn't fall. It froze in dance. You crouch beside it, inspecting the placement. There's no slippage, no slide marks. Just a perfect stop, like the heat turned to stone in an instant and said, "Hold it." You touch the ground nearby, it's warm. Not lava hot, just recent. Like the earth has a fever it's trying to sleep off. Then you look closer. The fossil's foot is twisted, ever so slightly. Not broken, just off. Wrong angle. The kind of twist that says they missed a step. This wasn't extinction by eruption. It was a stumble. Historians still debate whether this fossil is a one-off tragedy or part of a broader pattern. It's one of only a handful ever found, caught in literal mid-motion with no clear trauma. Some say it was struck by a thermal pulse. Others claim it died of inhalation right as it turned. But there's also a darker theory that the Firesteppers had a choreography of death. That when they misstepped, not just physically, but ritually, they were claimed by the volcano. A final audit of the dance. You take a breath deep and too hot and try to picture the moment. This creature had probably danced this path dozens of times. Knew every crack in the stone, every rhythm from the mountain below. But this time, something was different. Maybe the tremor shifted half a second early. Maybe it tried to turn too fast, or maybe it hesitated. And in that blink snap, not an explosion, just silence. Then stillness, then stone. Here's your historical fact. Fossilized footprints at Lark Quarry in Australia show what's believed to be a dinosaur stampede, possibly caused by a predator. But some of the prints abruptly vanished, not because the animals fled, but because the ground shifted. A sudden sloof. One heartbeat of imbalance and the record ends. A misstep can erase you. You step around the fossil carefully, boots scuffing the ash with a new kind of reverence. This wasn't just a dancer. It was the one who faltered. And somehow, that makes it more real than any of the others. Because beauty is beautiful, but failure, that's human. And apparently prehistoric too. Odd fact for you Olympic gymnasts, even at their peak still trip. Still miss a landing. Still overshoot a spin. It's called a gravity penalty. In nature, that penalty isn't points. It's permanence. You stand, again gaze sweeping the ledge. The steam starts up once more, faint and sporadic. The volcano breathes again. But you swear it's shallower this time. Like it too saw the fossil. Like it too remembers the moment the beat dropped and someone missed it. You keep moving. The path now slopes downward and the rock changes. Less black, more red. Iron-rich stone, brittle, almost crumbly underfoot. The air tastes like rust, and the landscape ahead blurs with it, a haze of heat and regret. As you descend, you start thinking about memory, about how most of what we know is gone. Not because it died violently, but because it died quietly. Forgotten. You remember the mural in the cave, the spirals, the dancers mid-step. You remember the juvenile learning the routine in silence. And now you remember this fossil caught trying to keep up. You want to say something, but the mountain is louder. A pulse travels up through the slope. Short, sharp, not an eruption, a warning. You step aside, plant your boots more carefully, and whisper you almost had it. Not mockery, not pity, just acknowledgement. Because if we remember the ones who got it right, we should remember the ones who didn't too, especially when they gave everything trying. You follow the path deeper. Though, calling it a path is generous. It's more of a series of memory scars where lava once streamed and hardened, then cracked under its own weight. Your boots crunch on shattered stone, and every few steps you lose rhythm, which now feels like a personal failure. The air is heavy with static. Not weather, not heat, something older. It settles behind your ears, creeps across your scalp like you're being listened to by something too patient to blink. And that's when you see the shapes. Human shapes. Not fossils, not bones. Paint. red ochre smeared along a vertical rock face like someone grabbed a handful of rust and started remembering out loud. You step closer and realize they're not random marks. These are figures. Long limbs, short torsos. Stick-like but purposeful. Each one caught in motion arms, raised legs, bent tails, or streamers flaring behind them. There's a rhythm to the sequence. Left, right, twist, fall. They're doing the same motions as the Firesteppers, but they aren't Firesteppers. They're humans. You blink, shake your head, double check. Nope, still human. You're looking at a record not of prehistoric movement, but of people who came after long after the dancers were gone. People who must have seen something or heard stories whispered through the mountain's breath. And they didn't carve monuments, didn't build temples. They danced, and then they drew it. You run your hand beneath the first figure. The ochre is old but stable. Someone added fine detail feather shapes along the arms, circular spirals around the hips. An echo of the ancient dancers. You step back and scan the wall. There are dozens of these paintings. Some large, some barely bigger than your palm. One cluster shows 3 figures with exaggerated tails spinning in a tight ring. Another set shows a single dancer bowed beneath a sunburst. Maybe the volcano, maybe a god, maybe both. And then you find the one that makes you stop. It's near the bottom of the wall, barely visible through soot and age. A human figure, arms out, legs crossed mid-spin, and beside it a Firestepper. Not fighting, not chasing, not even watching, dancing with. Historians still debate whether early humans ever encountered species like the Firestepper. Timelines rarely overlap that neatly. But here's the thing, myths don't care about timelines. And this is myth-made motion. The locals, the ones who painted this, they didn't try to conquer the volcano, they tried to learn its steps. They believed these creatures weren't monsters, but messengers. Dancers fluent in magma, tempo, and time. You sit down near the wall, the stone warm beneath you, and let the thought settle. What if the Firesteppers were more than a species? What if they were readers of the earth? And what if ancient people knew that? You dig through your bag, pull out a page from your field notebook, and scribble down the key symbols, spiral, feather line, crescent stance, handprint. Because here's your historical fact. Many ancient cultures created dance traditions designed to communicate with nature. Not metaphorically, literally. Dances to bring rain, calm the sea, cool the mountain. To ask, to thank, to survive. And if anyone needed to know what the Earth was planning next, it was people living beside a volcano that sometimes forgot the difference between sleeping and shouting. Your offbeat fact of the day: there's a remote tribe in Indonesia that still performs a volcano dance during tremors. Not to ward them off, but to listen. To sync up. They believe that rhythm reveals intention, that if you move with the mountain, it won't need to crush you. You think again about the Firestepper you saw, and the juvenile watching it. And now these paintings. This isn't just a story of a dinosaur that danced. It's a story of something that taught others how to move in rhythm with risk. The Firesteppers didn't survive by fighting lava. They survived by understanding it. And when they didn't survive, they left the rhythm behind. You rise slowly, feeling the pulse again faint steady. You follow a line of red handprints out of the painted alcove. They lead you back into the open air, where the crater yawns before you like a sleeping mouth. The breeze smells different now. Less sulfur, more dust. You realize you're almost at the summit. The final place. The highest platform. Where the rhythm ends. Or maybe where it begins again. And before you step forward, you look back one last time. At the red dancers, the stick figures, the spirals. A message etched into stone by people who remembered not the beast, but the beat. Because long after the creature is gone, the steps remain. You climb the final slope slow. Not because you're tired, though you are, but because it feels wrong to rush now. This last stretch is strangely quiet. No tremors, no steam vents, just the crunch of ash underfoot and the wind dragging its feet across the crater like it doesn't want to be here either. At the summit, everything opens. You're on the volcano's crown, a wide flat ring of shattered obsidian and burned stone. Below you, the caldera yawns deep, and bottomless, a dark throat that once spit flame and dancers alike. And just beyond it, standing alone at the rim, is a shape you almost miss. Because it's so still, you think it's a statue at first, but then it moves, slowly. A step forward, a tail lift, arms raised. You blink, and then it begins. One step, two, a pause. Then the sway starts hip-tail, hip again. The creature spins not fast, not flashy, just controlled. Every motion deliberate, each limb precisely placed. Not improvisation, not panic. This is a ritual. The wind whips around carrying ash into soft curls as it circles the dancer. The clouds above crack slightly, letting in a weak sliver of purple dusklight that falls directly across the stage. The Firestepper doesn't react. It's too focused. And as you watch, you notice the ground beneath it is marked. Not with natural wear, not with random cracks, with steps, indented fossilized patterns carved into the stone. Spirals, turns, pause points, a stage set by memory, maybe by ancestors, maybe by performers long since turned to soot. But this one knows the dance, and performs it with reverence. The volcano rumbles, soft appreciative. This isn't a performance for mating or survival or ego. It's devotion to the mountain, to the rhythm, to something older than either. And this is the last one. Your gut tells you that. This dancer is alone. Not because others fled, but because this is the last dance. One final performance before the earth forgets how to keep the beat. Your historical fact for the finish. Across cultures, final dances are sacred. The Hopi people perform a last ceremonial kachina dance to mark transitions between seasons. Balinese rituals end with the Rejong Dewa, a farewell from the youngest dancers to the gods. There's power in ending well. The Firestepper knows this. It spins again, slower this time. Its claws click lightly against stone. A feather loosens in the wind. The sky turns darker still. You realize you're crying, not loudly, not in sadness, but in awe. Because you're watching something extinct do the most human thing imaginable, say goodbye with grace. Your off-topic fact, though it doesn't feel off-topic anymore, elephants have been known to sway rhythmically near the bones of their dead. Not out of fear, not even grief, but reverence, recognition. This isn't just biology, it's ceremony. The dancer stops. Tail out, arms wide, 1 foot lifted, held, a long, impossible pose. Then the wind shifts, and the volcano breathes. Bays a long final exhale. The dancer vanishes into it. No panic, no stumble, just gone. Like the beat was finished and the body followed. You're left alone. Just you, and the empty crater, and the rhythm still pulsing in your chest like a drum no one else hears. You don't speak. There's nothing to say. You sit at the rim as night finally settles. The mountain goes still. You breathe in dust and memory. And you understand now? The Firestepper didn't dance at the volcano. It danced with it until the music ended. And so we've reached the quiet part of the story. The ash has settled. The dancers are gone. But their rhythm, that strange ancestral beat, they've left that behind. In spirals carved into soot in bones, posed like punctuation in the murmur of a volcano that sometimes feels more like a metronome than a menace. What began as a mystery, why a dinosaur would dance at the edge of danger, ends not in an answer but a kind of understanding. The Firesteppers weren't reckless, they weren't mad. They were tuned to a frequency we lost somewhere along the evolutionary path. A beat buried beneath fear, beneath survival, beneath logic. They moved with the earth, not against it. And when humans came later, they remembered. In ochre paint, in step, in silence. We don't always need to conquer to matter. Sometimes showing up at the edge of something terrifying and choosing to move anyway, that's the miracle. You followed the tracks. You've seen the stage. You've watched the final dancer step into history without fear. That story may be prehistoric, but it's never felt more present. So next time the ground trembles beneath your feet, whether from tectonics, grief, or awe, don't run. Listen, it might just be the volcano asking for one last dance.